it is one of our favorite programs on our air, and this is one of our favorite people right here, and it's so awesome to have her here around the round table. Another indication that we're getting a lot closer to the way things ought to be from now on, for sure. We love the Connecticut River, LRB. The station is dedicated to the Connecticut River Valley. We've straddled the Connecticut River up at the 4th Connecticut Lake. It's so important to us, and so much of our programming it pertains to what this amazing asset spawns and what it gives birth to, both in the real and also in culture and myths and stories and legends and industry and this so much. And we always get a chance to journey whenever we're visited by Melissa Josefiak. She's the executive director of the Essex Historical Society, and there's something really, really cool going on. A special event that is now in its second year that speaks to why we love the Connecticut River and the important things that we need to preserve. I mean, this whole platform was created to preserve stories, and you're doing it in a really, really special way with this event coming up. First of all, welcome, Melissa Josefiak.
Oh, thank you, Dave and Linda. It's so great to see you in the flesh, so to speak, to be back here in the studio. Yes, we've got a wonderful collaboration coming up. We traditionally talk about the most recent 400 years of history, about European settlement, but we've been doing a deep dive. We've been talking to community partners. We've been thinking about our Indigenous history as well. And this is the second year that we'll be talking about our Indigenous Connecticut River Celebration, working with our Native partners, the Nahantaks and the Abenaki. And we're talking about not just that it's stayed history that is of the past, but we're recognizing tribal communities and their culture going forward, and how those particular tribal communities are celebrating their culture every day, very sensitive to their past, and it is everyone's mission to learn more about those cultures and see how all of our cultures intertwine up and down the River Valley and all across Connecticut. So we've got a day plan of stories and song on September 17th at our host site, the Connecticut River Museum, 67 Main Street, all day from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we'll have a number of cultural presentations, some academic presentations, hands-on activities for children, story time, Native story time. So there's something for everyone at all different levels, the way that you connect with Native culture and history. And we're so pleased to work with all of these partners to bring it to the public.
Well, we also have one of your partners on the line. Do you want to introduce David?
Yes. So David Brule is one of our planning partners. He's a member of the Abenaki as well as the Nahantak tribal community. He is one of our speakers and just the best connection to all of our tribal communities. So please join me in welcoming David Brule.
Hey, David.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
David, it's important for us not to forget. It's important for us to celebrate the collective arc, as it were. What does this event mean to you?
Well, this is really a tremendous experience for us of the Abenaki and the Nahantak. Originally, the idea goes back pretty far, but we wanted to have a day of celebration where my own group, my own community at the estuary has relations all the way up the river, as you mentioned, up in through Abenaki territory. So this has been an effort to bring the upper Connecticut River tribes into and a kind of a festival, a happening, a powwow, just a wonderful celebration down at the mouth.
So, can you take us back? I don't know, about 400 years. I mean, what was the landscape like? What was the cultural encounter like when settler explorer met the original stewards of our area?
Wow, I would say that's a loaded question because it's so. The history has been written predominantly by. Those earlier historians, colonial historians who had a certain bias. So we know for a fact that what they wrote about mainly involved conflict, which is unfortunate. So the I believe I could say that the landscape really extending from the vicinity around New Haven and the Quinnipiac all the way over to the Narragansett lands and what is now known as Rhode Island, a lot of that was Nahantic homelands under the leader Ninigret, who's a number of his, let's say, descendants controlled a good section of the eastern part of our homelands for a number of generations. But it'd be really challenging to actually come up with anything specific about what that was like, only because, as I said, our histories are traditionally and always have been oral. So what is not written down sometimes is lost, especially when there is a huge diaspora of our storytellers and our elders. So that's kind of our situation among the Nahantic. And the same for the Abenaki. There was a real challenge to maintain, let's say, a visible presence, because it was actually dangerous to be an Indigenous person for a good part of this last 400 years.
Wow.
It's heavy.
There's some stuff to unpack there, brother. But let me go back to one of the things that I'm grateful for with this event. First of all, that it's right there at the Connecticut River Museum, which is the kind of the caretaker for better understanding the import and the impact of this living thing called the Connecticut River, that we love to say has 820 miles to it, 410 up on one side and 410 back on the other side.
Wonderful description.
But the fact, David, the fact that your event is happening on the bank of this mothership, this amazing resource of energy and life, it speaks to kind of the original steward's relationship to Mother Earth, to the Mother River, to our natural landscape. Can you share a little bit, because as we understand it, the original way one became educated and one started to learn was through observation. That's how the original stewards were able to understand, what to eat, what not to eat, what animals did, how to hunt, all of these things. Can you speak a little bit about the relationship of the natural world and the original stewards?
Oh, sure. I would perhaps fast forward to my own experience for a starter, only because I can really relate to what you were saying. I was born and raised right on the banks of the Connecticut River, perhaps in an area that you paddled through at one point, which is just in the vicinity of Northfield, Massachusetts, right on the Vermont border, in a village that the Abenaki call Squawkeek or Squawkeek. And so I grew up pretty much on the banks, literally born within half a mile of the river, and my family lived on the river. Eventually my childhood home was literally about 500 feet from the banks, and so I spent much of my own youth in what I called a kind of an apprenticeship. I wasn't quite sure of why I was drawn to the river and why I spent all those hours of solitude, but you're right on in the sense of I had the time and the opportunity to spend hours and hours just observing and drawing in a lot of the wisdom of the river and the voices, the smells of the river, the seasons. It was just an incredible apprenticeship as I was growing up, and as I became more and more aware of my connection with the estuary of the river, I felt increasingly tied to those people who originally moved up the river from the reservation lands at Black Point in East Lyme. And I can trace my family's movements, almost leapfrogging up the river to where I am now, which is right, as I said, right near the Vermont border, right on the river. So the connection. It's often interesting when people ask how to express a land acknowledgement, and for us, the Native people, it's something that we live. We always are thankful. We daily give thanks to the land and to the flowers, the trees, the birds, the four directions. So it's really a deep part of our own being, and that comes, as you alluded to, from hundreds and hundreds of years of living in close balance and reciprocity with Mother Earth, and certainly with this wonderful river that we're all working really hard to protect, to bring back to its more pristine shape.
That's one reason why you have to go there on September 17th and hear this. Hear David speak. I mean, you're one of many people that are presenting, and there are various demonstrations and activities. But Melissa, it has to be important for you to be able to have this perspective shared.
Yes, as David was speaking, I was thinking about my own journey in the sense that it's been 15 years since I was in graduate school. This was never offered. This was not part of the education curriculum. So as we meet with our tribal communities and we better understand the viewpoint and how we look at history, and how there is almost a seismic shift in how we're looking and presenting our history. So in the last year or so, since this first presentation, every single one of our tours starts with a Native story. We explain about geography. We explain about how the Nahantic and the tribal communities before them were using this land. And that lays the groundwork when we start talking about the European settlement. And if it wasn't for this program, I don't think my own brain would have thought that way. And I think now this is part of the process, and saying this isn't a re-education process, and this is an opportunity for all of the cultures to mix, and at all different ages. And so we've got a number of things. If you want to connect with the academic presentations, we've got hours of them planned in a very approachable way. Scholars, Native representatives. David himself will be doing 2 story times for children at 11:30 at 3. So there's the opportunity to gather even at the youngest ages. There'll be a number of hands-on activities as well. So visiting our website or the river museums, we have the opportunity. You can look at the schedule, and yet also the cultural presentations. They will be working throughout the day. We will have a drum group, Humble Spirit. There'll be Native dancers as well. There'll be handicrafts. David was talking about ceremonies. There's an important welcome ceremony. We'll be having a bonfire to start the day. All of this is so ceremonial and religious, connecting with the land. There will be so many things to experience that day. You will go away changed. I mean, that's a guarantee.
David, what's one of your favorite stories that you're gonna entertain the youngsters with?
Well, I don't want to give anything away, but at the same time, the point in my experience of telling stories is that embedded in each of these stories that involve invariably the human beings and the non-human beings, furred beings as well as feathered beings, there is a lesson embedded in these stories. And so one of my favorite stories involves a hummingbird and a bear, no less. But what I attempt to do, I've been a public school teacher for the last 40 years, so I'm very at ease with groups of children and young adults. And so I tend to try to lead the story and lead the listeners to a place where they can grasp what the lesson embedded in that. And traditionally, these stories were told, as I said, to help the younger tribal members learn about how to work with nature, with Mother Nature, to work with one another, to work in reciprocity and harmony. So those are the kinds of things. There's all kinds of stories that involve how the chipmunk got his stripes, and why the dog is our close friend and follows with us. All these kinds of stories. But like I said, I'll start with, as a teaser, with the hummingbird and the bear, and we'll see where my listeners, whether they seize, and I know they will, whether they seize the lesson embedded in that.
I think I've got a new best friend.
Yes, oh yeah.
I love this, David. That's going to be fantastic.
Really amazing.
In front, you can't see it, my friend, but in front of Melissa, who is putting on the white gloves as we speak, is an artifact. And for our listeners, we're going to put this up actually on YouTube later on tonight, so you'll actually be able to see what we're talking about here in Radio Land. But Melissa, do you want to share a little bit about what you're handling there?
Yes, so I've got two pieces of Nahantic pottery. There have been several archaeological digs over the last 100 years or so in all three villages of Essex. So 3 of those collections have come down to us relatively undocumented, just from general understanding. So there are 2 pieces of pottery that came off a site we believe was off of North Main Street, and they could be up to 400 years old. We believe it's right around 1500, 1600, based on some connections with Wesleyan University where they have a similar pot. So this is some nice clay pottery that has a certain design to it. We believe it at one point was part of a cooking vessel, and the designs that are on there are mostly small puncture marks in several lines, cross hatches, and then if I flip it over, you can see kind of the concave nature of the pot. That's clearly, it was curved at one point, and this is the general lip. So we believe it was a cooking vessel and would have been suspended over the fire. There would have been a thong of some sort of animal, muscle or sinew that would suspend it over like a point, and that there would be charred on the inside. So working with our partners at Wesleyan University, we were able to take a look at our shards and then helpfully date them. And then several years ago, the state archaeologist, Dr. Brian Jones, friend of the show as well, he gave us a whole day, and where we had these kind of questionable collections, he went through in several hours, was able to date all this material for us. So as I was preparing for the show today, I wanted to double check that I had all my dates right, and I go back to Dr. Jones's notes. So
that's emotional.
Yes, we had a wonderful experience with him. So we're happy to bring these small shards, but what they represent is, as David was talking about, the conflict, but this is really the culture that we're seeing. This is the everyday, what was stored, what was cooked in these particular vessels. So when you just looked at, they're small pieces of kind of dull brownish pottery, but they represent an entire culture. So when Linda approached me about bringing objects, and we're happy to do that. And some of our objects, not this particular one, go back thousands of years as dated by Dr. Jones.
David, we have a contributor on our air, Professor Emeritus from the University of Hartford, Wick Griswold, who has a program called Connecticut River Drift. And in that program, he said that the most important innovation and most miraculous creation, invention, as it were, was the canoe. I personally am fascinated in a world that didn't have the internet, that didn't have a textbook, that didn't have a blackboard. I'm fascinated with how the original stewards thousands of years ago came up with the atlatl, saying that we need something that can get greater torque and greater force because we need to eat, we're hungry, we need to be able to kill bigger animals, and we need to do it more effectively and without risk. So the atlatl to me is a fascinating innovation. I bring these two things up only as an example, and seeing this amazing artifact in front of us. Our original stewards were just expert in innovation. Mm-hmm.
Well, in listening to Melissa's remarks too, we've got to remember. You alluded to 400 years. We have artifacts that can date the arrival of the first Paleo Indians from the Southwest back 13,500 years, at least this part of the Connecticut River Valley where I live. And you have to imagine the tens of thousands of people who have gone before, whose spirits are still in the air we breathe. But that's a long, long time. And as native technologies evolved, of course, older ones were discarded or lost. Our own modern experience with my group up here has been the dugout canoe. You mentioned the canoes and our what we call a mishun. We participated 2 years ago in creating one of those dugouts in a traditional way, and you basically burning night and day for 4 days. And we got a little bit of it done, believe me, but it would have taken much longer. So, the technologies change, and of course, at the contact time that you mentioned, many of the traditional ways were left aside because the copper pots and the metal implements were much more fascinating and portable and durable. But on the other hand, part of our history and our culture is to retrieve that kind of significant, what would I call it, way of life and understanding what people knew before. And in that regard, I would be amiss if I didn't mention the name of Dr. John Pfeiffer, who will be speaking at the museum on the 17th of September, who he grew up in Lyme, and he has dedicated his life to the Nahantic culture. He's an archaeologist and an anthropologist and has worked all over the basin of the Long Island Sound, as well as in places that in our Nahantic homelands. And he was really responsible for helping us draw in our diaspora. So a very important person. He has a lot to say. He'll be there also. But he is the one, he is our Nahantic historical preservation officer. He is the one who has all of the information in his head, and he is also writing a book on what he has learned over the years. So I'm sure he'll be interested in seeing what Melissa has and commenting on it, because he has a wealth of knowledge. I really want to mention Dr. Pfeiffer.
Well, we encourage everybody. This is an important event, and you'll learn, you'll be entertained, you'll be fascinated. It's Indigenous Connecticut River Celebration, and it's happening September 17th from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock at the Connecticut River Museum. I have to say, David, that you are part of a nonprofit organization. I just want to give a plug. Pardon me if I'm butchering this, but the Nolambika Project?
Oh, perfect. Yes, Nolambika, which is an Abenaki word meaning a calm place between two rapids. So we kind of see our role as that kind of presence in bringing together tribal and non-tribal people in various cultural events. So, yeah, good pronunciation.
And web destination if people wanted to learn more about the important work that you do.
Yeah, that's typically the Nolambika Project website, nolambikaproject.com. Easy enough to find. Great Facebook presence and website.
Perfect. Melissa, is this a come one, come all? Is it a ticketed event? How is one going about
It's free and open to the public.
Wow.
Walk-ins welcome. There'll be good parking on the upper lawn of the Connecticut River Museum and up and down Main Street. We'll be trying to light the fire before 10 o'clock. And then the program begins, at least for the speakers, around 10:15, 10:30. And then our cultural presentations will complement the speakers as they go on.
Can a 60-something-year-old sit in and learn about the chipmunk stripes?
Yes, and if I don't have time in my storytelling, you track me down and I will share that and plenty else with you. Would be a great pleasure for me.
Fantastic. David, we so appreciate it. Melissa, before we let you go, I just want to let you know that now on my morning walks, because I too, not unlike David, I seek the water for a calm for me. And I walk almost every day from here to the Connecticut River and back. Mm-hmm. And lately, I've been going to the Riverview Cemetery because of the great things that you've made us aware of there. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. And we've got we've got Riverview Cemetery walks coming up on October 7th and 8th. Number of programs: Essex Village Walk, Pratt House is still open, and you can find all of this information, including the celebration, on our website, essexhistory.org, and the socials.
This is going to be awesome. I'm gonna be there, David. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person and learning and just vibing off of your passion. This is going to be special, and it'll be fun for people of all ages, and a little bit of learning can go a long way. So
I gotta say, we're the luckiest people in the world to sit here.
David, thanks so much. Melissa, as always, thanks so much for being part of iCRV Radio.
Thank you.
May I say Akwene Nitap, meaning peace, friend. We'll see you then.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Take care.